Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Christmas is coming in a couple of days, and I have an early Christmas gift for you. Back in the summer, I had the pleasure of talking with Ben Kutchins ASC about season 3 of White Lotus. It's been a good 5 or 6 months now, and the reason it took me so long to edit this is because I am a real person too, and I need to pay rent and I need to work. I'm not getting paid for any of this, so this is all purely recreational. This was by far the longest interview I've ever done. We talked for about 3 hours in total. There's just so much material to edit, and Ben was just amazing. He had so much to share, and I didn't want to interrupt him. I don't usually shoot interviews this long, but I didn't have the heart to stop him. I really enjoyed everything he had to share, and I hope you will too. I decided to split this interview in a few parts. I will try to edit the rest early next year. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm joined by Ben Kutchins ASC. He shot The White Lotus, Ozark, and a bunch of other really cool movies and TV shows. I'm super excited to talk about White Lotus Season 3. You shot it on Sony Venice.
I mean, the truth is I've been mostly shooting ARRI for a long time. I knew we were going to be outside in Thailand with whenever you're on an island. I learned this season 1 of The White Lotus that it's cloudy, sunny all day. I knew that that was going to be a pretty big challenge this season. So I chose a Sony Venice because of the internal NDs. The ability to like switch an ND without taking off the matte box and replacing a filter in front of the lens. Secondly, for the Rialto, super small handheld mode. I would say that we didn't have the Venice built in the Rialto mode most of the time. We would just switch it out because it's a pretty quick switch over. I think if you know you're going to be handheld all the time and you want to use it, then you can build it in this sort of configuration where it sits all on one rail. But we didn't need to do that because we weren't using the Rialto that often.
It's just a lot heavier and bigger. So
it makes the camera much longer and a bit awkward to maneuver unless you're actually going to use the Rialto. I think I bounced between the Sony and ARRI cameras for the last few years, and I love them all for different reasons. They have their, if I had to go do another season of The White Lotus in Thailand right now, I would pick the Sony Venice again. I remember like the first 15 movies that I shot were mostly on film. So the leap to trusting a digital camera was a tough one for me, and that started out with ARRI a long time ago, and then the Sony really in the last couple of years has matched very well with what ARRI has been doing. I take into consideration what camera I think is right for the job in many different aspects. Is it going to be friendly with the environment, i.e. does it have built-in NDs? Do I need something that has better roll-off in the highlights? Do I need something that works really well in low light? I'm thinking about the project as a whole, the environment, where we're going to be, what my limitations are going to be in terms of lighting. I'm thinking about all of those factors when I'm picking a camera.
If you know for sure that you're going with, like, let's say Alexa 35, that it's going to be pretty standard. You're going to need a first AC, second AC, third AC. Is there a difference between if you rent another camera, you think you need more people or less people? It's more like...
I mean, I'll just be completely honest and say that I hire really good people and I trust them to tell me. And the person I've worked with for the longest is Liam Sinnott, and he's amazing, and I basically trust him to run the department. At some point, I considered shooting season 3 on an Alexa 65. I think that it was prohibitive for a few different reasons. The amount of information that we were going to be shooting every day, for example, has to be beamed across the world. Before we can wipe a drive, it's actually being beamed to LA to be put in storage. We can't wipe the cards until all of that footage has been secured. So it was the wrong choice. So I quickly backed away from that camera for that reason and moved to the Sony Venice.
Alexa 65 sounds like an amazing camera. If it's a smaller project and you don't have to work across the world.
Yeah, I mean, I've shot few movies on the Alexa 65 now, and it's one of my favorite ways to work. I love using a very large sensor. There's so many lenses that you can put in front of that technically aren't supposed to cover that sensor, but do, and fall off in an interesting way. And to be able to shoot at a high ISO, I just feel like it's a very versatile camera.
What did you shoot season 3 on? How did you pick those lenses? And what kind of characteristics you're looking for when you do lens tests?
Well, the fun thing about shooting the White Lotus is you're following all these disparate groups of characters, including the people that work at the hotel, the people that are visiting the hotel, the families, the girlfriends that are on vacation. I made an effort to really develop a shooting style that was slightly different for each group, either handheld, focusing on being more handheld, focusing on having more depth of field, focusing on compositions that for the family that held more people in the frame. How much of the family can I squash into a frame? Whereas, some of the other characters, I'm really trying to isolate them in the frame and show their loneliness. A character like Rick and Chelsea, trying to not do too many two shots, but more focus on their singles and making them more alone in frames. So there was that level to like the forethought of how I wanted to shoot the season. But in terms of lenses, I brought different toys to play with for different characters and to use them in a different way. So the lens that I used on this season were a combination of rehoused Leica rangefinder, Olympus rehoused movie cams, which are basically rehoused Olympus glass, some Petzl lenses. And that was sort of the main group of lenses that I used. I sort of had 2.5 sets of lenses, disparate in their characteristics and how up they are. I particularly like a lens that falls apart quite a bit. I find that that's a way that I can combat these sensors that are so powerful that you can literally see every pore on somebody's skin. That's a style that I'm not comfortable working in. Some people do it really well to have these very high performing lenses on an 8K sensor.
I noticed that on F1. It was so crispy and so clear. Sterile, yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely a style that works. Yeah. If you're trying not to do that, then you need to come with specific tools.
Yeah, there's things that I'm not good at. For example, I love watching Conclave, but that's not a film that I would know how to do in that style. I think that that's a master at work doing something, but I'm doing something completely different. And thank God, I think that's what makes filmmaking so interesting, is that you can do anything. The choice is yours. You can make whatever, you can make it however you want. It's important to like rebel against the standards and the norms and just watch something and try to recreate that look. I'm just doing these things because I enjoy watching it. And when I imagine the movie in my mind, this is what I see. And then I'm just trying to achieve that thing that I saw in my mind and using all the technical tools to get there. I, unlike other people, don't like a sterile, clean look. I like vintage lenses that sort of fall apart and break apart a little bit. And I also just think that that's kind of what I'm good at and what I've been thinking about over the last years. Also, like, how do I use a digital sensor in a way that gets me excited when the image pops up on a monitor?
I think it worked really well in season 3.
Thank you.
It's a huge part of a DP job to see it in your head first before you actually go out and create that thing.
I'm still learning, and all of this is a learning process for me. Like the lenses that I used on season 3 were all built by Zero Optic, which is a company in LA that's doing rehousing of vintage glass, that's doing amazing work. And, I worked with them very carefully to develop ideas of things that I'd been interested in over the last, 20, 30 years of doing this, things that I was interested in. Like I've loved Leica lenses for a long time, but I don't love the new Leicas that are coming out. They're a little too sharp for me. They're beautiful lenses and they're perfect for another project. But for this, I really honed in and built a set of lenses that I thought would really serve this season very well. I learned a lot along the way about those lenses and what worked and what didn't. And I'm going to take that on to the next project and the next time that I do it. And I'm preparing to do it film now. And I'm not going to use that set of lenses because I want to do something completely different. Break your ideas of what you think is cool and interesting and do something new and challenge yourself. And the way to keep myself engaged and excited about a project is to break all of the knowledge that I think that I have, because we don't know shit, and to stay a child in this process and be open to what happens,
Because when you do the same thing every time, it's easy to stay back and not learn anything.
And you get bored and you start thinking of this as a job. I didn't become a DP to have a job. I would have made a lot more money doing something else.
I feel that.
So an important part of the process for me is that I don't ever shoot with Rec 709. I always create a unique LUT for almost every project that I do. And I think that that's an important part of the process for me. As I'm reading the script and talking to the director and sort of listening to the director talk about it, I start to create a world visually for myself. And part of that is, what is the LUT that I'm going to shoot with? And so I start that process when I'm working with the director, do a bunch of tests. I'm doing simultaneously, I'm doing lens tests and I'm doing LUT tests. So I'll talk to the colorist, in this case, Tom Poole was the colorist of the White Lotus season 3, who's an amazing friend and just a beautiful artist. He works at Company 3 in New York. The stars aligned and we got to work together on this. So he started by sending me a LUT when I was in Thailand, and I shot a couple tests with. We got on a remote session where I can watch him work with some of the footage. We took that shooting LUT, manipulated it a little bit. I went out and shot another test, further manipulated it, pushed it around a little bit. And something that I've tried to do is steer away from what I used to do, is have multiple LUTs. I would have like a night LUT, a daytime LUT, an interior LUT, an exterior LUT. I think that became a little too confusing and convoluted. And I've found that actually just using some simple CDLs on top of LUTs has become my workflow in a better way. So refining that shooting LUT so that it works for a broader spectrum of work has become important to me. I think it's important to be inspired when you look at the monitor, that it doesn't just look like a soap commercial and like everything that you've ever seen on TV that looked mediocre, which is hard when you're looking at Rec. 709. I find it personally hard because it's just so far away from where I know that I want it. So it's hard for me to like stay inspired. And so it's become an important part of my process to create a LUT that is pretty fucking extreme.
In a way, looking at Rec. 709 is even worse than looking at log.
We could spend this whole interview breaking down why I don't love 709. It's perfect for when you're starting out and you're trying to figure out how to expose. And once you get past that, I think it's important to start working with different LUTs to create a vibe and a feeling. I think that the most important thing that I can bring to a project is a vibe and a feeling, an overall sense of emotional viewership and ownership over how the audience might feel when they're watching this. There's all kinds of other things at play. There's the tone of the acting, there's the music, and there's all these things. But I think that I help to create the atmosphere. That's part of what that, building your own lookup table is. And I think that's one of the main things that you can do with the help of colorist if you have a great one.
Is it an industry secret? You mentioned that you did a remote session with your colorist. What kind of software do you use for that?
It's not an industry secret. It's literally, you just need an iPad and you make sure you turn off True Tone. Everything that we shoot is behind a lot of firewalls, safeguards so that people can't access the material. So you're doing it on a secure encrypted connection. I don't remember what that software is exactly. And when you're watching on a private session that only you and the colorist can view on, and the technology is pretty amazing. I can watch in real time with an iPad Pro and a good connection, a good Wi-Fi connection. I can watch in real time as they make tweaks. It's the same as sitting in the room. I think that there is something personal that happens when you sit in the room, but I've done a lot of remote session work. And this workflow has changed a lot in the last 10 years. It started when I was doing Ozark. I would go home at night and I would color correct a movie that I had shot before the season of Ozark started, and that was kind of where it began. And it's just a game changer because it started a lot with me like getting stills and circling different parts of the frame of where I wanted windows and giving very detailed notes, and the ability to do a remote session while I'm off shooting one project and come home and do a couple hours of work at night has been a real game changer.
So one of the things that I do, I like to draw on the screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I noticed that. I like that. Try to predict what I'm doing.
Yes.
Let's go. I like this game.
One thing I noticed is this over the shoulder looks simple to an untrained eye, but this is one of the most difficult things you could do.
I mean, there's no light that exists that can compete with the power of the sun.
Exactly.
So it is like 20 stops over compared to underneath this overhang that we're enclosed in.
I mean, it looks great. First off, if this was shot naturally with no lights, she would be completely dark, like a locked character in a fighting game. There's a little clue in the eyes. I think it's something like an 18K, maybe 2. This backlight, that's all real. All comes from the ambient hazy sky. Yeah, I think that's all.
I mean, you're pretty much on it. There's two 12 bys kind of side by side. So that's essentially making like 24 feet of like wrap light that's coming from the camera left side, from her right side, and wrapping around with an 18K into each of it. There's a little more edge light there than there is on the other side of her face. Whoops. A vortex or a sky panel 360 that's just outside of the edge of frame that's creating a little more of the edge. You're right that all of that edge light on her shoulders just skimming into the edge of the frame that's creating a little bit of that edge. So what I'm doing is I'm put the camera there. I know that I'm going to need to start lighting. How much light I need is based on exposing for the highlights. So I'm putting in NDs until that background is 90 IRE or lower. Anytime you try to bring down something that's even close to 100, it starts to get very noisy and it gets a little messed up. If you start at 90 as your max exposure, when I try to bring it down later, that's more successful than it's even at 95. If it's 100 and above, you're just When I first started shooting digital, I was just doing what I used to do on film, and film has this beautiful roll-off that happens between the highlights that are like 10 stops overexposed and things that are 3 stops underexposed. Something really interesting happens in that area. The grain starts to bleed over in a way that it doesn't happen on digital. What happens is a very hard edge that you can't get rid of later. And there's no organic process to help soften that blow. So what I'm doing here is I'm exposing for the highlight. I know exactly how high I need to go, and then I'm just lighting to that point. And I have an amazing gaffer. I have an amazing key grip. We've all been doing this for a long time. There's some idea about how much light we need to have. It's never like a perfected process. Adding in 2 18Ks and there's a 360 there. You know what? Actually on this side too, there's probably another 360 that's maybe not 100% but dimmed down just for fill. Create a little bit of fill there. Because like you said, it's just gonna turn black without that. Like anything without a light pointed at it in the situation just kind of turns to black.
So just to be safe, it's good to have more than you would need.
I generally will say, if somebody says, I'm gonna bring in a 9K Arri Max, I'll say, why don't you make it 2? Because you can put a double in there and quickly cut it in half. If you need another one, you gotta roll it all the way in. I think you always wanna have more than you think that you need, because then it gives you the ability to play, no, that's too much, we need more, we need less. It's really easy to drop a scrim in there. If it's an LED, it's really easy to turn the knob and dim it down. We're doing 5, 6 scenes a day. This is not a luxurious film shoot. We are shooting one scene and there is not a breath before you're shooting another one, another one, another one. Like by the end of the day, you've ran a sprint and you're like exhausted.
And it was like that for how long?
We shot for 6 months straight, so it was 130 days. And the longest break we had in the 6-month shoot was a 3-day weekend.
How do you not go crazy?
I don't know, ask my therapist.
So I noticed that in other scenes, you use this approach where the hard light is kind of hitting half of the bed, but then this top part of the bed is all soft. When do you do that? When do you not do that? Why didn't you do it here?
That's a common trick, to do a hard light and then sort of use what I call a soft topper. Piece of diffusion that just comes in and just kisses the hard light off the top of their face. Hard light on somebody's face is a little unattractive, and just adding that little level of softness, in particular the eyes. The nose can cast a pretty harsh shadow. Now the sockets of the eyes can become pretty pronounced if you're using hard light. The reason that I chose to not cover the hard light on her in this scene, this very raw, honest moment, she's just cheated on her husband. Her husband is probably cheating on her. So I love the feeling of just this like harsh sunlight, as harsh as the reality of the world is, and just letting it hit her and not thinking about like, how do I make this prettier? So I'm trying to tell that story emotionally as much as I can. Your job as a DP is not to make things look pretty. You are here to aid in the storytelling, to create atmosphere, and to, whenever you can, implement these tiny things that are unnoticed by 99.99% of the audience, but it's more of a feeling that you're creating and you're contributing to the performance.
It's not the brains of the audience you're talking to, it's their hearts.
Yeah, and I think it's, it's important as an artist to like tune into that, and as a DP to like tune into that. Get yourself in that. Like, how would I feel waking up in the morning if I had just cheated on my partner? What does that feel like? That feels like, oh my God, the sun is hitting me in the face and the reality of what I've done is hitting me in the face, and where am I now? Focus on the emotions of the scene whenever the AD's not yelling at you. It's important as a DP to really read the room. When does the director want to move faster? When are they cool with you taking some time, that this is a visual moment, that you're doing some real visual storytelling? When is it about the actor's performance and you just need to get out of the way? Sometimes it's your time and sometimes it's other people's time. And you want to just create a space. Be prepared for things to not go your way, because once you start rolling, the set belongs to the actors and the director. I had to learn the hard way in the beginning of my career to not come in and start tweaking things, that you really take your time when you're setting up for the actor to come on, and you don't let the AD call them in until you're really ready and you're willing to let go of whatever's about to happen. And be prepared for them to walk back into that corner that's not lit.
Typically, these kind of decisions made in pre-production, or sometimes you talk to the director and say, hey, what do you think about this?
And I would say on a movie or a more typical show, yes, a lot of these decisions are made ahead of time. This is such a monstrosity to deal with that these decisions, to be completely honest, are mostly made in the moment. I'm the only DP shooting on a show that shoots for 6 months, so we're barely keeping our head above water. What I'll do when I'm reading through the script is I'll pick out key scenes that I know that this is how I want it to look, and that there's an important tone that I want to hit with a particular scene. If that's something that's outside of the box of what I'm going to be able to achieve, outside of an everyday setup, then yes, that's something that I'm thinking about in prep. There's a quote from a DP that I really love, which is basically that if every scene in the movie looks amazing, everyone's just going to be talking about the photography and not noticing the story. So I think that our job is to occasionally like hit these high notes. It's like an orchestra, you know, sometimes it's your time. Most of the time you just want to be quiet and you're just kind of supporting. When I was younger and when you're starting out as a cinematographer, you sort of think it's your job just to wow everyone. And I think that really your job is to show up, listen, learn, be attentive, and really support the director. Yeah, there's moments where it's your moment to really shine and tell the story. It's something that I learned later in my career, is to really learn how to listen to a director and read between the lines, because people don't always tell you directly what it is that they're looking for. People don't know how to articulate visual ideas as well as cinematographers might be able to. It's a visual language. We don't speak a visual language. What does your director need from you in that moment? How can you show up for them? How can you support the actors? Or how can you help this whole thing into a place where it's going to be successful and the actors have an opportunity to have the stage and give an amazing performance? That's when we do our best work, get out of the way and try to help usher this thing down the aisle in the best way we can, you know. Some directors out there that are very visual. They know exactly what lens they want to shoot on. They know where the camera wants to be. So your job is to support them. There's some people that don't speak that visual language. That's the beauty of this career, and I think I've really learned to enjoy that. All the different personalities, and every party is a different party.